Good evening. Good evening, Assalamu alaikum and namaste. Welcome to Air Quality Index of 235. Although in this room, thanks to extraordinarily amazing technology provided by Punita Kala and Sita Saxena and Margot, we are only at about 92. So you're very safe. Talia, exactly. Well, anyway, listen, it's a great pleasure to welcome all of you to our 6th Muhammad Ali Habib Distinguished Lecture on Pakistan. For those of you who don't know my name, I'm Dr. Munis Faruqi. I am the director of the Institute for South Asia Studies. I also am a faculty person in the Department of South and Southeast Asian Studies. I also happen to be the person who's going to basically implore you to put your phones off or put your ringers down so that we are not disturbed through the course of this event. Before I go any further, I would really like to welcome a distinguished guest from Karachi. She has flown all the way from there to be with us on this auspicious occasion, and I am referring to Ms. Tatir Hamdani. Tatir Sahiba is the Chief of Staff to the President of Habib University and the Director of Global Engagement. Can I please ask you, Tatir, to stand up and receive our applause? So as the Director of the Institute, I'm often called upon to attend talks, events. I also often introduce speakers whenever I'm asked. And I will just say that the Habib Distinguished Lecture Series on Pakistan holds an extremely special place in my heart. And truly here's why. It was this particular series that inaugurated the Pakistan Studies Initiative here at UC Berkeley back in 2013. We have been building off this foundation for many years now, and in many ways, because of the vision that the Habib family and the Habib Foundation offered us, we have really been able to put together an extraordinary ecosystem focused on Pakistan here at the Institute for South Asia Studies. And it's an ecosystem that has many component pieces. I don't get many opportunities to talk about it, but let me brag a little since I've got perhaps 2 minutes. It, among other things, allows us to have all sorts of programming for Pakistan. Interesting programming that allows us to ask questions about Pakistan, its identity, its contemporary politics, but also its history. It's a program that has also spawned the Berkeley Urdu language program in Pakistan, which, as some of you perhaps know, is the only American-run Urdu intensive semester-long program in Pakistan. We have alumni who have been on this program, who are now faculty at Berkeley. I'm thinking specifically about Beth at the back. And a lot of energy has gone into this particular program, and it's been very important for us. We also have an Urdu teacher training program, which offers summer and also semester-long Urdu as a second language training to roughly 2 or 3 Urdu teachers a year from Pakistan. Then there is the annual SSP Zada Dissertation Prize, which is given to the best doctoral dissertation focused on Pakistan in the social sciences, humanities, law, education, and visual and fine arts. The same family, the Pirzada family, also endowed a distinguished lecture series in Pakistan Studies, which is a complement to this particular lecture. It's always held in the spring, in as much as Habib is always held in the fall. And most recently, UC Berkeley has become the go-to place for an annual Fulbright conference that brings over 100 Pakistani Fulbrighters to campus. Much of this is building off a foundation that was laid back in 2013 of a vision that the Habibs got and supported. And I'm deeply, deeply grateful as a result to the family and also to the foundation. The way in which the Habib Distinguished Lecture Series has served as a catalyst for these opportunities that I mentioned, honestly, in my mind, speaks extremely highly of the Habib family, but also the Habib Foundation's willingness to think expansively, to think imaginatively, by supporting the mission of institutions like UC Berkeley. It's a mission that attempts to make and offer more complicated conversations about Pakistan, conversations that allow us to think about this very particular and sometimes peculiar country in ways that get beyond a certain kind of mainstream coverage that you will hear about Pakistan. And in so doing, in some ways, what I think, aspire to, and what I hope we have been able to achieve over the years, is in some ways matches the vision of the founder of the House of Habib in Pakistan, the man who actually graces this occasion, Muhammad Ali Habib. And allow me to just say a few words about Muhammad Ali Habib. By all accounts, he was an extraordinarily generous individual, a man who was extremely dedicated to not just a positive vision for Pakistan, but also a willing participant in the building of Pakistan in the 1940s and 50s. The Habib family, following his death, really became synonymous with the building of schools, the financing of a wide array of charities across Pakistan, and also, and this is something that I'm always reminded of by Wasif Rizvi, who unfortunately is not here tonight, the president of Habib University, it bankrolled Pakistan in 1947. There was no money left in the treasury. So thank you, the Habib family, or no thanks to the Habib family. you decide which side of the ledger you're on. To my mind, UC Berkeley, with its driving commitment to social justice, its excellence in public education, and its deep engagements with the world, is the perfect place to host the Muhammad Ali Habib Distinguished Lecture Series. And therefore, I am grateful to the Habib family and the foundation for agreeing to, in a sense, place this lecture series with us some 7 years back. But there is a second reason why I am so deeply invested in this particular series, and I look forward to it every year. You see, year upon year, this lecture series has brought absolutely amazing speakers to campus. They have included folks like Asma Jahangir, the noted but now sadly deceased Pakistan-based human rights lawyer, Aisha Siddiqa, perhaps the most astute observer of the Pakistan Army, Christoph Jaffrelo, the author of Pakistan Paradox, one of the best recent books on Pakistan, Mark Kanoya, a renowned scholar of the Indus Valley Civilization, and David Gilmartin, perhaps the world's leading historian of pre-partition Pakistan. And so, in some ways, Raza Rumi Saab fits perfectly in this distinguished roster of speakers. He is, in my opinion, one of the bravest and most insightful thinkers on contemporary Pakistan. His rich and varied life has enabled him, in many ways, to be both the quintessential insider but also outsider, a man who occupies both spaces simultaneously and who, as a result, offers us insights on Pakistan that I find extremely valuable and interesting. That said, let me share a few highlights about Raza Saab's life. He was born in Lahore, and after attending Ithaca College, Rumi Saab headed off to the United Kingdom, where he received a BA in economics from the London School of Economics. This was followed by stints in the Pakistan Civil Service in the 1990s, as well as United Nations peacekeeping work in Kosovo in the early 2000s. Following his UN work, Raza Rumi joined the Asian Development Bank, where he was particularly involved in governance issues, including such topics as decentralization, access to justice, and institutional building. His stint at the ADB led to further international development work for the United Kingdom's Department for International Development, UNDP, UNICEF, the World Bank, among others. But the irrepressible Mr. Rumi wasn't content to just stop there. Starting in 2008, he entered the raucous world of Pakistan-based print journalism. And since then, he has served as a writer and editor at the Friday Times, an editor for the Daily Times, and a general commentator for several publications in South Asia and beyond. Complementing his journalistic work after 2010, Raza Rumi also became an increasingly visible fixture on TV as a political commentator. In 2013, he started hosting a current affairs talk show on Capital TV entitled CD Baat, or Straight Talk. In January 2014, he joined Express News, where he hosted a current affairs show called Khabar Se Aage, or Beyond the News. And around this time, he was also appointed director at the Jinnah Institute, a public policy think tank. Raza Rumi's commitment to social justice issues, citizen rights, and federalism have made him a go-to person for all manner of conversations about Pakistan. In particular, however, it was his outspoken opposition to extremist and Islamist groups in Pakistan that rendered him a target for assassination. And in 2014, Lashkar-e-Taiba almost got him. Although Raza Rumi survived an attack on his car, his driver Mustafa, a 25-year-old man and the bread earner for a family of 10, did not. But following this attack, Rumi Saab went into exile, and although he has regularly visited Pakistan in recent years, he has successfully, thankfully, carved out a new life for himself in the US as a policy analyst, a journalist, an author, and an academic who has enjoyed stints and is enjoying stints at Ithaca College, Cornell University, NYU, as well as a whole bunch of think tanks, including the New America Foundation, the US Institute of Peace, and the National Endowment for Democracy. In whatever spare time he has left, and I don't know what time you have after all this is done, Rumi Saab thinks and publishes books focused on Pakistan and the Pakistani experience. And so, among other things, he's the author of Delhi by Heart, Impressions of a Pakistani Traveler, The Fractious Path, Pakistan's Democratic Transition, and Identity and Faith and Conflict. His most recent collection of essays is titled Being Pakistani, Society, Culture, and the Arts, which was published in June 2018 by HarperCollins. It is truly an honor to welcome Raza Rumi to Berkeley as our 6th Mamdali Distinguished Speaker. No doubt we are all looking forward to hearing his thoughts on Naya Pakistan, or not so Naya Pakistan, as you might know. But regardless, it's going to be an intriguing conversation with Raza Saab. And on that note, I would like to welcome him to the podium. Please join me in welcoming him to Berkeley.
Thanks a lot for this rather humbling introduction, too generous. I don't think that I fit into the long series of distinguished scholars that you mentioned. I'm just a student myself of Pakistan and the world. And I'm truly grateful to the Institute for South Asia Studies and the Habib University who have sponsored this event. And it is indeed a privilege to be named along the line of rather remarkable people, some of whom I know personally. This talk, I had prepared some notes and I thought I'll read what I wrote, but as always, I thought it's better to just maybe outline some of the main points of what I want to say today, and then perhaps give more time for an interactive session where some of the issues that I may leave out or do not explore in detail, we can certainly pick them up in the Q&A session. Pakistan's unique history, is basically a tale of a country trying to both search its identity and the kind of governance system that it wants to adopt. So, since 1947, from the very inception of Pakistan, this question has really been explored time and again. What is it to be a Pakistani? What does it mean to be a Pakistani? Because the initial knee-jerk definition was that everything that was not Indian is Pakistani, and then after a decade or so, people who held power and thinkers realized, well, that's too limiting, and perhaps we need to redefine. And so over the decades, that contest whether Pakistan is going to be an Islamic state, whether it's going to be a secular state, whether it's going to be a hybrid of the two, or whether it's going to be a modern territorial nation state, is still very much an open question. And it really depends on who you are in Pakistan. If you are someone from the Islamist parties, or someone who thinks that Pakistan was created to be an Islamic state, then you would adhere to that particular vision. If you are a modernist, secular, you would say, well, Jinnah and Liaquat were modern Muslims, and Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the founder of Pakistan, in his first address as the Governor General, very clearly articulated a vision for a tolerant and a moderate country, in which he very clearly said that yes, Pakistan's creation entailed a lot of communal contest and communal violence, etc. But it was time to forget that and move on and rebuild and create a new country. However, these questions remain unresolved, and one of the biggest, problems that many politicians and political parties have faced in Pakistan is how do they position themselves. So take the case of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who was the first elected popular Prime Minister of Pakistan, an avowed secularist, self-styled Democrat. But when it came to steering the country after the 1971 war and the breakup of Pakistan, he also played the Islam card and the Muslim card rather expressly. So not only that his party led the declaration of the Ahmadiyya community as non-Muslim in 1974 through the Second Amendment, but later on he also initiated a very comprehensive Islamization program, which was then subsequently picked up and cemented and expanded by General Ziaul Haq, who took power in 1977. But alongside this contest of what kind of a Pakistani state or what kind of a Pakistani society we were thinking in 1947, the other unopened question which still kind of remains unresolved is who is to rule this country. Is it going to be elected Democrats through a parliamentary democracy, or is it going to be a civil-military combine, much like the continuation of the colonial state in 1947, and that contest still plays out. So half of country, Pakistan is 70 years old, and half of that was under direct military rule. The rest of the country's existence was under either weak, tottering, or insecure civilian governments. And this, with these two particular questions, I guess they're also playing out in the contemporary sense, especially if we look at Pakistan today. These two contests are very clear. So the first one, if you all followed that, a Christian woman who had been sent to prison and was on death row for 8 years or so, was recently acquitted by the Supreme Court, which was a very kind of courageous act of the Supreme Court to do. But immediately thereafter, there were huge street protests, and for 3 days the country was brought to a standstill by a motley group of Islamists who thought that a blasphemer just cannot be acquitted. It is impossible, and because she happens to be a non-Muslim, she must have committed blasphemy, and that the only way that they would end their protests would be the actual execution of that Christian woman called Asia Bibi. And we saw that, the Islamists called out the military, the Supreme Court. So, for example, they said that the judges who had acquitted Asia Bibi were wajibul qatl, or fit for murder, and that the military should actually remove its top commander and, through a mutiny, replace the generals with more Islamic or more faithful generals. And this was a direct challenge to the state, and the current Prime Minister Imran Khan, whom I'm going to talk about in a little bit, made a very strong statement saying that the state will not tolerate any kind of violation of law, and the writ of the state would be re-established. But within 24 hours, his government made a peace deal, quote unquote, with the Islamists, in which they said, okay, well, you can go and review the petition, and we shall not file any cases against you, and we shall not, prosecute you for treason or inciting violence. And basically that particular narrative remains unchallenged, unchecked, and unpunished. And part of that has to do with the fact that there are elements within the state who think that Pakistan's destiny is to be an Islamic country, a kind of a fortress of Islam, and the other part perhaps thinks, well, it's too dangerous to annoy a band of clerics, considering that there have been high-profile assassinations in Pakistan, such as that of Governor Salman Taseer in 2011, when one of his bodyguards from the elite police force murdered him. And so you have this contest going on. Now, in this particular scenario, the rise of Imran Khan and his brand of politics is both intriguing, as well as we can understand it better by looking at the gradual state project of creating an Islamic a whole narrative around Islamic nationalism, and the fact that Pakistani identity is that of a Muslim identity. And this is also exhibited by the fact that Imran Khan's own election rhetoric and political rhetoric invokes the ideal of Medina state, or a Medina welfare state. Whatever that means, we really don't know, because much of it is shrouded in historical past, mythology, and some anecdotal evidence. And but it is a great slogan, because it kind of it brings in the welfarist idea of a modern state much. And he mentions these examples from Scandinavia as well, like Sweden or Norway, and he says, well, there's redistributive growth over there, the state takes care of education, health, and other basic services, and yet Pakistan will be that, but plus it will be a Medina state. So that, and that draws a lot of popular support, particularly from his, support base, which is largely urban, middle class, and one of the reasons that Imran Khan has been so successful in garnering public support in the last few years and rising to the top and becoming the Prime Minister has to do with the expansion of his support base, i.e. the middle class. The Pakistani middle class has grown in numbers over the last 2 decades, and currently Pakistan's population is around 210 million. And very conservative estimates say that the size of middle class is more than 50 million, and it could be even higher if other definitions of middle class are included, and it could actually go up to something like 70 million, or the groups which are near middle class or almost middle class. So middle class definitions are problematic. There's no universal, singularly accepted definition, but in general they are measured through the consumption patterns in the country. So for the last 2 decades, while Pakistan's economy is always in news for bailouts to and requesting the Chinese and the Saudis and the Americans and the international financial institutions to inject foreign exchange into Pakistan's economy, but the on-ground reality is that in Pakistan there is a flourishing consumerist society, where the number of motorcycles, air conditioners, washing machines, even vehicles or automobiles has been increasing exponentially over the last 2 decades. And at the same time, the remittances which are sent by Pakistanis overseas have also seen an increase. I mean, only through official channels, nearly $20 billion are transferred each year into Pakistan, and most of them are used for households' consumption. And these are only through banking channels. And if all other channels, the non-banking channels, personal transfers or the hundi or hawala, which is now under a huge sort of scrutiny due to money laundering and anti-money laundering international regimes, it could be 3 times the size of the official number. So from 50 to 60 billion dollars roughly are sent in by millions of Pakistanis who work abroad. So that particularly has led to and at the same time, Pakistan's services sector has also grown. So it is now currently the biggest segment of Pakistan's economy, more than 60%. So jobs in banking, insurance, telecom, private media, they have also grown exponentially over the last 2 decades, thereby creating a new middle class, which is both globalized in a way, yet which also exhibits the traits of its of other middle classes which we see in the region and beyond. So, for example, the Indian middle class has also expanded, and it has voted in the BJP in recent years, which is again a very conservative and a sort of a force which invokes religious nationalism for popular support. And so this middle class is not a monolith, and it does not have a particular political ideology. It comprises a variety of ideologies in its fold, but most of it is united on one particular point, which is to get rid of the old corrupt elites, the traditional political elites, which were from the landed families, the big business industrialists like Nawaz Sharif, the former prime minister who was elected three times, and others, and who are considered by this new middle class as a major stumbling block to Pakistan's future progress and future growth. And Imran Khan's narrative kind of not only echoes that but reinforces that. Imran Khan considers all other political forces, most of the political parties, as corrupt. He has been on record saying that he's going to prosecute all of the former leaders for corruption. He's going to try them. He's going to purge Pakistani politics of these corrupt elements, and this resonates rather well with this new middle class. And that and this rise of new middle class obviously has other implications as well. Its size may not be overwhelmingly large, where it can direct or shape the entire spectrum of national politics, but it does have a huge influence in public spaces. So, for example, in the private media, which has also expanded since 2002, when the electronic media were deregulated by the Pakistani state, just around the time when the same happened in India and Bangladesh as well, and there was a huge expansion of media industry. A lot of media professionals and technicians and media producers come from this class, so they actually reproduce this particular narrative. Similarly, a lot of recruitment in the state institutions like the judiciary, like the civil service, even in the military, is often from this educated quote-unquote middle class. And at the same time, while these economic transformations have been taking place and political economy shifts have taken place, we should also remember that due to states' long-term neglect of vital services such as health and education, the private sector has jumped in, has also created a parallel parallel education system. So Pakistan's largest province, the Punjab, which is almost 60% of the population, close to about 58%, half of the children that go to school actually attend a private school. There has been a manifold expansion of private sector, higher education institutes and other spaces, whether in the Punjab province or actually it's been a trend across the country. And under the General Musharraf regime from 1999 to to this was actively encouraged and even subsidized to some extent to have more and more expanded higher education sector. Now there are issues about the quality, etc., but those are a separate topic for discussion. At the moment, it is an unprecedented moment that for a young Pakistani graduating from a high school, he or she has far greater opportunities to study in different fields than it ever was. And these shifts are also reflected in the increasing participation of women in higher education. So if you look at the public sector education universities, almost, or actually at some point it was more than half, but nearly half of the student body in Pakistan's public sector universities comprises young women. If you look at women's role in public spheres, it has also expanded far too much than at least I remember in my lifetime. So, for example, I can give you a figure that General Musharraf also changed the constitution to have reserved seats for women at the national and the provincial levels, and in the parliament that was elected from 2008 to 2013, there were 72 women parliamentarians, and they generated 80% of the business in the National Assembly and tabled more than 60% of the private legislation bills. Now that also kind of explains that the kind of shifts that Pakistan has been undergoing in the past 2 decades, and all of this, this creation of new middle class, high consumption, more engagement of urban professionals in the national conversations, in the national politics, means that there is a greater contest for a different shape and a different future for Pakistan. And that is perhaps what Imran Khan's promise of Naya Pakistan promises and denotes. It caters to these aspirations of an urban population who want a country which is governed in a different manner, which delivers in a different manner, and which perhaps has an alternative future trajectory. Now, what that is, obviously, these are questions which are open questions. But I think at the same time, what is happening alongside these shifts is that not all of these transformations or changes in demography, and one important demographic transition or transformation that I forgot to mention earlier is the fact that Pakistan also happens to be the youngest country in the South Asian region. So the median age of a Pakistani today is somewhere between 23 and 24, with almost 2/3 of population below the age of 30, and nearly 70% of the population in this category of, again, these definitions are very problematic. They vary from government to government and agency to agency, but generally below the age of 35 is what is kind of generally accepted as the youth or new citizens, and therefore you have a far greater participation by young people in both the electoral process as well as in the public conversations about politics and about the future of Pakistan. And a lot of them are again relate to Imran Khan's politics, his charisma, and his kind of a clean vision for the future. But how clean is it? How different it is? How Naya or new is it? That's again a question that has to be looked into with some greater detail and scrutiny. I think the larger story, again, which is not only limited to Pakistan, but is actually common to the South Asian countries, is that the post-colonial state kind of reproduces a lot of colonial structures, whether it is the way police is organized and rules. So all South Asian countries are still governed by the 1861 Police Act, which is a coercive policing law, which treats natives as subjects to be suppressed and contained and punished if need be in both public spaces and prisons. It also retains the civil service structure, which was actually designed and put into place somewhere in the middle of 19th century, and it really hasn't changed. And so there are these colonial, post-colonial continuities, and you see that a lot of state-citizen disconnect in Pakistan, in India, and in Bangladesh and other countries is linked to this essential kind of a conflict or a problem which the new countries or young countries have still to address. In India there have been some moves to reorganize the civil service, but again at very minimal level. The other important feature of this is that these are very centralized states even today. So the local government systems in Pakistan, Bangladesh and India are very weak. I mean, in India only recently the local government system has been kind of empowered, but it still operates by and large under the centrally appointed district of bureaucracy. And in Bangladesh is a unitary state. It does not have provinces at all, and its local governments again exist, but they function under the centrally appointed civil servants. So power in real terms has neither been devolved nor has been decentered. And same goes for Pakistan. And in fact, the irony in Pakistan is that every time we have a military ruler, he introduces a local government system, and then you have political governments coming in, they roll it back and send them home, and you have no local government. So there's this larger disconnect as well, which is shaping this kind of protest and this outrage against the way the old Pakistan operates and operated for decades. And Imran Khan is also a proponent of local government, and that has been his promise. So in the last 5 years when his party was ruling one of the provinces, i.e. the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, he did put into place a fairly decent local government system, and started off with some cosmetic and some a little more than cosmetic police reforms, where a greater degree of police accountability was introduced, and that perhaps became a model for capturing the imagination of a lot of other voters during the 2018 elections. And so this particular issue with the post-colonial state and the citizen-state disconnect leads to a kind of a brand of politics that ironically calls in for a strong man to fix this dysfunctional system. So whether that strong man is Imran Khan, Narendra Modi in India, or strong woman in Bangladesh who can fix and fire and hire judges, etc., or throw all the opposition leaders in jail. The 2014 elections in Bangladesh were boycotted by almost all the opposition parties, and it's for all practical purposes a one-party democracy. I'm trying to given these examples from South Asia, because there's a common trend that we see in both in terms of the clamor for change, something drastic to be done by a strong leader, and at the same time an overemphasis on the power and the magic and charisma of a strong leader to do that. And part of that is also promoted in the case of India by the growing power of the corporations and that paint both Modi as a kind of a messiah for the middle classes and the poor in India, promising a better economic future. And you see his photographs, his posters, his personal projection as this one man who can set everything correct in a short span of time. And it's Imran Khan's projection and his and the way he is viewed and he's imagined as this deliverer of good governance is no different. So, for example, Imran Khan's party has senior turncoats from the other parties that he attacks and wants to undo. Because they've crossed over into his party, so they have become kind of clean and less corrupt or new. And a lot of people, when you point out to Imran Khan supporters that he's also relying on the other corrupt elites that have been ruling the country, so the response is that Imran Khan is clean himself, and he will ensure that nobody indulges in corruption. He will ensure he will fix everything. So there's this whole idea of a strong man, fixing long-term structural age-old problems for the general populace. And that places Pakistan in a kind of a global moment, so it is not just Pakistan, India, or to some degree Bangladesh in there, but we see a global rise of this both yearning and support for strong men who would intervene and fix things. So whether it is Erdogan in Turkey, who also promises to be this great, and he has delivered, to be fair to him, despite all his autocratic tendencies and soft fascism that he's instituted in Turkey, by jailing hundreds of journalists, academics, and activists. During his reign, and that's what I would call the per capita incomes in Turkey have trebled, and the delivery or access to education is close to 98 or 99% in the past 2 decades or so. And if you look at here in the US, we again see that the rise of Donald Trump also promises the same kind of there's one man who's actually going to build a wall to keep all the thugs and murderers and rapists away from a great country, and you have this guy who's going to bring back all the jobs that the Chinese crooks have taken away. So it's that of popular narrative, and Pakistan is no exception. Imran Khan is no exception. He fits into this larger global moment where we are seeing a rise of a very toxic brand of nationalism and, dare I say, fascism. And the recent election in Brazil of a person who's clearly very, very Nazi-esque in his pronouncements and approach is again a testament that it is kind of a global epidemic. And if you look at what's happening in Europe, in Germany, in Bosnia, in Italy, in Hungary, the list grows. And so I guess the Naya Pakistan therefore is not really new. It is definitely a new society that is coming into shape due to all the political economy transformations and shifts that I outlined. It is a whole set of new aspirations in the urban sort of population, pockets of urban population. But is it new brand of politics? Well, not really. It is not, because Imran Khan's engagement with the national political scene is very much linked to the kind of rhetoric that has been used in Pakistan since its inception against the elected politicians. So there was a Governor General in Sikandar Mirza, who wrote famously saying that democracy does not suit the genius of Pakistanis in 1956. And General Ayub Khan put into place a whole law which was called EBDO, the Electoral Body's Disqualification Order, in 1956. And the former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, who was disqualified in 2017, again he was disqualified on the basis of alleged corruption, although that particular corrupt practice was not even proved, is yet to be proved because there are 2 or 3 trials going on parallel. So in a way, that anti-politics rhetoric that Imran Khan projects and presents is very much the kind of approach that the civil military establishment in Pakistan, which has ruled the country for much of its life, has also been projecting. And also, I think one other important aspect which needs to be highlighted is that by invoking the religious sort of passions, the references to a glorious ancient golden past, such as the Medina state, Imran Khan is again repeating what the earlier rulers since 1947 have been doing. They have consistently been using the religion card to solidify and consolidate their power. As early as 1949, the Pakistani politicians passed something which was called the Objectives Resolution, that basically declared that Pakistan was to be governed under the both a hybrid of democracy and a Sharia. And later on, the Objectives Resolution was not justiciable or could not be enforced, but General Ziaul-Haq, a couple of decades later, made it into a part of the constitution, and it still exists as a constitutional provision as Article 2A, which can be both taken to courts. If any act of the parliament or the government is found to be against the Sharia, you can actually get it revoked. So, I mean, and there are countless examples in every period of Pakistani history where religion has been used and abused to consolidate political power. So, in that sense, also, I think this reference to both a Medina state and also playing a bit soft on the Islamist parties and Islamist groups, I think the newness is not very much there. I think it really remains to be seen how much of his promises he can deliver, because there are structural constraints, there are structural problems, as I've outlined, both in the nature of state, the way state is organized, but also Imran Khan takes power in a peculiarly difficult situation where due to excessive borrowing in the recent years, Pakistani state is facing a huge balance of payments crisis, which means that Pakistan would have to take a bailout program from the International Monetary Fund, which is going to impose severe restrictions on public spending, on development expenditures, and a lot of welfareist agenda that Prime Minister Imran Khan is promising would definitely be difficult to finance to begin with. Whether it's realized or not, there would be a genuine shortage of resources to be invested in that particular agenda. I think the other important final I'd like to add this development that, I always, for the past few years, I've been viewing Pakistan's current how to put it, I want to avoid these terms used by Western media, imploding, exploding, failed state. So Pakistan's current tension, if I may add that, or the contest that is underway in the past decade or so, is actually indicates both a political transition and a society which is under transition. So there have been some historically important changes. For example, the 2018 elections, third in a decade, is a departure from past trend that I outlined at the start. For example, the usual trend has been a decade-long military regime followed by a civilian government, fired or a number of weak civilian governments that don't complete their tenure, fired, sent home, and another military dictator steps in. And each time, interestingly, all three major military dictatorships were fully supported by the United States as well. So we must not forget the role of the international community, particularly the US, which has been a very comfortable and a blind ally to the most sort of regressive of military regimes, such as that of General Ziaul Haq, or even before that General Ayub Khan, because right after Ayub Khan's tenure, we had tensions with our eastern wing, which and a civil war later resulting in the formation of Bangladesh. And so there is a departure from that trend. So we have what now regular election. We have a kind of a change underway in the way in the institutional norms, where both the electoral process, democracy as an idea, is far widely acceptable than it ever was in the past 7 decades. At the same time, what we also witness is that due to this this repeated transfer of power from one civilian government to another, the traditional power centers in Pakistan, such as the military and the civil bureaucracy, are also somewhat anxious, and their anxiety is very evident from the fact that they, if Pakistan is to follow this democratic path and take this democratic transition forward, let's say for another decade, their power is going to recede. I mean, already Pakistan's military has taken a backseat since the exit of General Musharraf in the first, and a coup d'etat no longer is a viable option for the military commanders. So that by itself speaks of a shift. And if this process continues, then obviously the hold over the national affairs that the military has enjoyed traditionally, and its partner, the civil bureaucracy, again designed under the colonial regimes, etc., is going to wane further. So this particular anxiety is also being reflected in what we see, the reports that we have seen in the manipulation that took place prior to the elections in July of 2018. There were the two mainstream parties, the Pakistan People's Party and the party headed by Nawaz Sharif, Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz, complained of pre-poll rigging and engineering. There were also reports on selected interference on the polling day. And along with this kind of manipulation prior to the polls and on the polling day, there has also been increased, unstated policy of censorship on media. So there have been, two big media houses of Pakistan, the Geo network and the Dawn newspaper, have been under fire in one way or the other to either change their position or reduce their support for the former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif when he was still ruling, and then he was facing trials. And Dawn has faced reduction in its circulation. It has been prevented from being circulated to many parts of the country, and the Geo television in 2017 was routinely taken off air by the cable operators rather mysteriously. So unlike the past, when there were direct orders to censor newspapers and advisories issued to television, television there was only one channel, but newspapers particularly, this time even the mode of censorship is somewhat more sophisticated and somewhat hidden. In the sense that there is no official policy of censorship, there is no advisory which has been issued by any branch of the government, yet there is censorship taking place, and there is a lot of self-censorship that takes place. And I can say that because I also, as an editor, I've stopped checking the way articles or editorials or reports are framed by, I just have a checklist. Is there anything against the religion, check. If anything against the army, check. Anything against China, check. Anything against this power center, check. And my editing work is done. That's all I do. So I need to change my career, and so I guess what all of this anxiety is leading to more than the project of Naya Pakistan promised by Imran Khan. I think a greater story is that how Pakistan is transforming into a different kind of society, both a political and a civil society which breaks from its past trends, and at the same time, how does it cater to the aspirations of a burgeoning population, of which a sizable number lives in urban conditions, in urban areas, and requires clean governance and better service delivery and reduced everyday corruption. And I think these are the kind of issues which momentarily have appropriated by Imran Khan, but they will remain in political conversations and discourse in the years to come. I think I'll stop here because I may have gone over time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.